My name is Samantha Mitchell, and at 31 years old, I found myself shrinking in my seat at Luca, a polished upscale restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan, where my brother Ryan's engagement dinner was unfolding in full display, champagne, flutes clinking, and laughter echoing off marble walls. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as my mother clinked her glass, standing slowly, purposefully, to address the room with the flair of a practiced socialite. Her eyes, cold with disappointment, flickered to me for the briefest moment before she turned away and smiled at everyone else. "While Ryan has always made us proud," she began, her voice honey-sweet with poison tucked beneath every syllable. "Poor Samantha here has struggled to find her way, bless her heart." My cheeks burned with humiliation as 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me, some curious, some pitying, most pretending not to look. If you're watching this from somewhere around the world, I'd truly love to know where you're from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if any part of my story resonates, hit that subscribe button and stick around to find out what happened when my brother's beautiful, unsuspecting fiancé discovered who I really was beneath the quiet daughter, the overlooked sister, the girl they thought they knew. Growing up as Eleanor Mitchell's daughter meant living under a microscope that didn't just magnify flaws. It projected them in high definition, from elementary school spelling bees to college applications. Nothing I did was ever enough. Never quite right, never quite perfect. My mother, with her perfectly coiffed platinum blonde hair, immaculate French manicure, and country club membership that she wore like a crown, had mapped out my life before I even took my first steps. Prestigious university, Ivy League law school, marriage to someone from the right family, someone who fit into her carefully curated world, and a socially enviable career she could boast about. My brother Ryan, 2 years younger and every bit the golden boy, somehow always managed to hit the benchmarks that made Mom beam with pride. His A-minuses were celebrated like medals, while my A-pluses were met with tight smiles and questions like, "But why not join student council too?" When we both got into Ivy League schools, Ryan's acceptance letter was framed and proudly displayed above the fireplace in the living room. Mine was mentioned over breakfast, with the casual caveat that it wasn't as competitive the year Samantha applied. "You need to understand something," my father, Thomas, once told me in a rare and unguarded moment of candor when I was 16 and sobbing in my bedroom after Mom tore apart the first draft of my valedictorian speech. He sighed and said, "Your mother just wants what's best for you. She just doesn't always know how to say it gently." Dad was always the peacekeeper, the soft-spoken diplomat who served as a gentle counterbalance to Mom's razor-sharp expectations and passive-aggressive remarks. But peacekeeping often meant silence, especially when I needed him to speak up, to defend me, to see me. I did everything right, at least at first. I followed the blueprint exactly, like a dutiful daughter checking boxes. I graduated summa cum laude from Columbia, earned my law degree from Harvard, and landed a high-paying position at Prescott & Walsh, one of New York's most ruthless and prestigious corporate law firms. For 2 grueling years, I worked 80-hour weeks, giving everything I had to defend billion-dollar companies that made me feel physically ill with their ethical violations, their exploitation, and their corruption. I made more money than I could spend, wore tailored suits, carried designer bags, and yet I lost more of myself than I could afford to give. The breaking point came late one Sunday night when I was assigned to defend a pharmaceutical company that had knowingly pushed a drug with harmful side effects into low-income communities. I still remember sitting alone in my sleek corner office at 2 a.m., staring at documents that revealed executives laughing over how many deaths were worth the profit margins. While I drafted arguments to shield them from justice, I walked out. The next morning, I resigned. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 months after I left Prescott and Walsh. When she finally called, it wasn't to ask how I was doing. It was to tell me she'd informed the ladies at her garden club that I was on sabbatical to find myself. Unable to admit I'd rejected the life she'd carefully curated. What my mother never thought to ask was what I actually did after leaving corporate law. With my severance, savings, and experience, I launched Mitchell Consulting Group, my own firm, dedicated to helping nonprofit organizations overcome legal, red tape, access funding, and expand their ability to serve people who needed them. My very first client was an environmental justice group fighting a years-long battle against toxic waste dumping in underserved communities. I helped them win a landmark settlement that paid for mobile health clinics, clean water, and air testing for a full decade. While my mother whispered to her friends that I had wasted my education, I was laying the foundation of something powerful, something real. In just under 3 years, my firm had grown to 15 full-time staff and countless volunteers. We'd helped bring in over $200 million in grant funding, drafted policy language that passed into law, and trained entire boards to lead with transparency and compassion. But trying to explain all this to Eleanor Mitchell was like explaining sound to someone who refused to listen. Pro bono work is for weekends. Status points, not careers. She scoffed when I tried telling her about our major housing discrimination case. "Samantha, be serious," she'd say. So I stopped trying. I gave up forcing her to see me. At family events, I became a master of small talk, carefully vague when asked about work, shifting focus quickly to others. It was better than seeing her eyes dim with disappointment. Or worse, harden with judgment. Ryan and I stayed polite, even warm sometimes, though it never went deep. He'd followed the plan perfectly. Medical school, residency at a top-tier hospital, and now engagement to Alyssa Taylor, the graceful, poised daughter of a well-known cardiovascular surgeon. I never blamed him for following the script. We were raised in the same house, but absorbed different rules. He flourished under pressure. I cracked. I had met Alyssa just once before, over a rushed Sunday brunch 6 months earlier. She was perfectly pleasant, kind, intelligent, poised, and unmistakably loyal to my brother. We barely exchanged more than a few polite words, while my mother steered the entire conversation with a terrifying blend of wedding opinions and commands veiled as suggestions. When the engagement dinner invite landed in my inbox, my first instinct was to decline. Just thinking about hours of backhanded compliments and side glances from people who barely knew me made my stomach twist. But then Ryan called me himself. "Please come. It'd mean a lot, Sam," he said, using my old nickname. "For the first time in years, Alyssa really wants a chance to talk with you." So I said yes. I went shopping, bought a new dress I probably shouldn't have splurged on, selected a personalized gift I'd spent weeks picking out, and braced myself for a night of tight-lipped smiles and forced conversations. What I couldn't have expected was that night would be the moment everything shifted. How my family viewed me, how I viewed myself, and how I reclaimed my story. Lucca was exactly the sort of place my mother lived for. French name, haute cuisine, velvet curtains, and a waitstaff trained to judge anyone who dared mispronounce an appetizer. Overhead chandeliers bathed everything in soft gold, glinting off crystal glassware and 1,000 thread-count linen. A private room was reserved just for us. 20 hand-picked guests, with centerpieces I'm certain cost more than my entire grocery budget for the month. I arrived 15 minutes early, hoping to quietly slip in unnoticed and sit near the edge, avoid the spotlight, but instead, I walked right into my mother's gaze, sharp and assessing. "Samantha," she said, eyes scanning my outfit, like a laser from my styled hair down to my heels. "That dress is rather bright for evening, don't you think? The dress?" A rich emerald green, wasn't flashy. The boutique owner had even said it was perfect for an elegant dinner event. I had saved up for weeks just to afford it. "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied, forcing a smile. Leaning in, she kissed my cheek lightly. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and quiet judgment. "Your father's at the bar," she said, already turning to critique the floral arrangements. "Try not to crease your dress before the others arrive." I found Dad with a scotch in hand, his tie slightly loosened. His face lit up when he saw me. "There's my girl," he said, rising to give me a warm hug. "You look lovely, Sam." "Thanks, Dad." I slid onto the bar stool beside him. "How's retirement treating you?" We chatted about his golf swing, his basement renovation, and other safe topics, ones that wouldn't cause friction or draw Mom's ire. As more guests trickled in, we headed to the dining room. I took a seat near the far end, beside Dad's empty chair and across from Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister, and one of the only relatives who showed me consistent kindness. The room buzzed with casual chatter as both sides of the family filled in. My mother floated among them, graceful and smiling, effortlessly charming every guest. Dad played the proud host, making rounds and introductions. I remained still, offering polite smiles when necessary, otherwise doing my best to disappear into the background. A hush fell over the space when Ryan and Alyssa entered. They looked like a magazine cover. Ryan in a navy suit that fit him like a second skin, Alyssa radiant in a soft blue gown that made her eyes sparkle. My brother's face held a kind of lightness I hadn't seen at any family function before. "Thank you for joining us," he said, his arms snug around Alyssa's waist. "It means so much to celebrate this moment with you all." The room erupted in applause, and I clapped sincerely. No matter what else, I was truly happy for him. As they circled the room, greeting guests, I rose to hug Ryan when he approached. "Congratulations," I told him. "I really mean it." "Thanks for being here, Sam," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "It really does mean a lot." Alyssa stepped up to hug me as well. "Samantha, I'm so glad you came," she said, warmly. Up close, I noticed a depth in her eyes I hadn't seen during our brunch, a sharpness, a quiet awareness. "This is for you both," I said, offering the carefully wrapped gift. Inside was a rare first edition of a poetry book Ryan had adored in college. It had taken weeks to find. After they moved along to the next group, I returned to my seat, already bracing for the coming gauntlet. A series of awkward interrogations from extended family I hadn't seen in years. "Still doing that charity work, Samantha?" asked Uncle Robert, my mother's brother, who never understood what consultants actually did. "It's not charity," I explained with practiced patience. "I run a consulting firm." Right, he said, waving it off. "Your mother said you left that big law firm. Shame. Great benefits in those places." Before I could answer, Aunt Margaret leaned in, voice sugary and sharp. "Any special someone in your life, dear? You're not getting younger, you know." "I'm focused on my career right now," I replied, letting the words roll out like muscle memory. "Oh, that's nice," she said, with the sympathetic smile of someone who thinks you've made a life out of excuses. Throughout these exchanges, I noticed Alyssa glancing at me from time to time, At first I assumed it was simple curiosity, trying to memorize names and faces. But her gaze lingered, like she was trying to solve a riddle she didn't yet have the words for. Her parents, Richard and Catherine Taylor, were seated near the head of the table beside my mother. Dr. Taylor had the exact commanding presence I expected. Tall, composed, silver at the temples, with the air of someone used to being listened to. His wife was elegant and warm, her smile an echo of Alyssa's. They nodded politely when introduced, but were quickly swept up in my mother's orbit. "Isn't it wonderful?" I overheard her telling Mrs. Taylor. "When your children make you proud. Ryan's always been so focused, so driven to succeed." The meaning was clear, unspoken, but deafening. Unlike her daughter, who had squandered every opportunity. Once everyone was seated and the appetizers had been served, my mother rose. Poised with her champagne glass raised, she took control of the room, with the same confidence she used to command charity galas. "We are truly blessed to welcome Alyssa into our family," she began, her voice projecting. "Ryan has always made thoughtful, admirable choices, from his education to his profession, and now in choosing a life partner who complements him perfectly." I took a long sip of wine, recognizing the prelude to the performance that always came next. The passive-aggressive speech. "Of course," she added, letting her gaze sweep over to me. "Not all of us find our way so effortlessly." My stomach dropped. I'd heard this act before. The grand unveiling of how Samantha Mitchell squandered her potential. "As many of you know," she continued, "both of my children were blessed with intelligence and opportunity." Her tone shifted, theatrical and grand. The same cadence she used when trying to impress donors at fundraisers. Ryan, of course, made full use of his gifts, but Samantha, she paused dramatically, and I lowered my eyes to my salad. I counted the cherry tomatoes on my plate, 7, as if they held the secret to escaping this moment. "Samantha was once with Prescott and Walsh," she declared, though nearly everyone at the table had heard the story countless times. "Corner office, Central Park view, a fast track to partner, the kind of position that law school grads would sell their souls to have." I felt Ryan watching me, his expression unreadable, but I couldn't bring myself to look up. "And then," my mother continued, lowering her voice as if sharing gossip, "she just quit. No notice, no fallback, nothing. Walked away from a 6-figure salary to do, what was it again, dear?" She turned to me, voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "I started my own consulting business," I replied. Quiet but clear, though. I knew she'd never hear it for what it was. Mum waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. Yes, something with charities. Pro bono work, essentially. Such a waste of a Harvard education. Wouldn't you agree, Richard? She turned toward Alyssa's father with a tight smile, seeking affirmation from a man she assumed would share her views. Dr. Taylor looked like he'd swallowed something sour. "Well, different paths work for different people," he said, carefully. "So diplomatic," Mom laughed, clearly unfazed. "But we all know the truth. When you're given every advantage and end up barely affording rent while your classmates buy vacation homes, what else can we call it? Failure." The room turned thick with silence. 20 guests, all witnessing a private family wound made public. My dad cleared his throat, but said nothing. Ryan looked torn, but didn't speak either. And let's not forget the other parts. Mom continued, as if compelled. Samantha was engaged once, to Andrew Harrington, from the Boston Harringtons. Brilliant match, but somehow she let him go. That was cruel. Andrew and I ended things mutually and kindly. He wanted a hostess. I wanted a partner. We split with respect. We still exchanged cards. But to her, it was another black mark. "Mom," Ryan said at last, tense. "Maybe we can keep tonight about celebrating." "I'm not criticizing," she replied with a faux grin. "I'm just updating everyone on Samantha's journey. We're family, after all. Or soon to be." She gestured to the Taylors. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them back. Making a scene would only feed the fire. I lifted my water glass, hand trembling faintly. The point is, Mom raised her glass. Ryan's success makes it all worthwhile. At least one child understood value, of tradition, of perseverance. To Ryan and Alyssa, she finished with flair. To Ryan and Alyssa, everyone echoed, though some voices were dull, hesitant. As food arrived, chatter slowly resumed. I toyed with my fillet, appetite gone. All I wanted was to leave, quietly, invisibly. All through this ordeal, I noticed Alyssa's eyes drifting back to me, again and again. I thought she was simply watching her guests. But now, her gaze had something else. A flicker of recognition. When our eyes finally met, she looked away quickly, leaning toward Ryan and whispering something. He turned to me, surprise flickering across his face. Mom launched back into Ryan's highlight reel. School awards, medical feats. Each story dipped in pride and edged with comparison. Ryan knew how to network, she beamed. Unlike Samantha, who burned bridges at her firm with that little exit of hers, I hadn't burned anything. My former boss had reached out twice, begging me to come back, but correcting her would just drag it on. Dessert came, a creme brulee I couldn't eat. I excused myself, fleeing to the restroom. I stared at my reflection, trying to center myself. In a few hours, I'd be gone, back to the work I loved. That mattered, even if no one here believed in it. I turned to leave. The door opened. Alyssa stepped in. "Samantha," she said, the door closing behind her. "Are you okay?" I blotted my eyes quickly. "I'm fine, just needed air." She joined me at the mirror, her poised, flawless, me unraveling. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said. "All night." She paused, studying me. "Wait, Samantha Mitchell, like Mitchell Consulting Group." The name hit me hard. No one in my family ever called my company by its name. It was always that little charity work. But Alyssa said it with recognition. "Yes," I replied carefully. Her eyes widened. A look I never got from my family. Respect. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I knew I recognized you. Your mom mentioned Harvard, and it clicked. You created the Community Impact Assessment Framework." I stared at her. The CIF was my model, used by nonprofits to track and communicate their value. It had changed how the sector worked. But it wasn't exactly dinner conversation. "You know about that?" I asked. "Know about it?" She laughed. "I use it daily. I'm Director of Strategic Development at Boston Children's Alliance. Your framework helped us land a 12 million grant last year. It's changing how we deliver pediatric mental health services across the state." The air thickened. Alyssa wasn't just Ryan's fiancée. She was a peer, and one who understood my work. "I didn't know you worked in nonprofit development," I said, stunned. 5 years now, she nodded. "We actually used your firm last year. Not you directly. We worked with Jessica Chin, my top consultant. Brilliant. She's amazing," I said. "She said the same about you." Alyssa smiled. "But I'm confused. Your mom, does she not know what you do?" I leaned against the sink, weary. They know, but they don't believe it matters. To them, success looks like Wall Street or marrying well. Helping nonprofits secure vital funding. That's failure in their eyes. Alyssa's expression turned indignant. But your work is revolutionary. Mitchell Group is legendary in our field. When we heard Ryan's last name was Mitchell, I joked I should ask if he was related to the Mitchell, but I never imagined. What are the odds? A strange laugh escaped me. Half amusement, half the release of years of pent-up frustration. Pretty slim. Apparently you won the Kerfman Award last month. She continued, referring to a prestigious recognition in the non-profit sector that came with a substantial grant. There was a feature about you in Impact Quarterly. Your equity-centered approach to non-profit consultation has literally changed how the entire sector approaches community development. Hearing my achievements listed so matter-of-factly by someone who actually understood their significance was both validating and surreal. My family doesn't read Impact Quarterly, I said with a small smile. And I stopped trying to explain my work to them years ago. It's easier to let them think I'm struggling than to constantly defend a choice they'll never understand. Alyssa shook her head in disbelief. I don't even know what to say. Ryan never mentioned any of this. Ryan doesn't know, I admitted. We don't really talk about our careers beyond surface details. I think he assumes I'm doing small-scale local work. Nod. I gestured vaguely. Not running one of the most innovative consulting firms in the social impact space. Alyssa finished for me. Her eyes suddenly lit up with determination. This is ridiculous, Samantha. Your family is celebrating my engagement to Ryan while treating you like some kind of disappointment, when in reality, you're an absolute rock star. In your field. It's fine, I said automatically. The deflection practiced after years of diminishment. I've made peace with it. Well, I haven't, she replied firmly. And I don't think Ryan would be okay with this either, if he knew the truth. Is there a reason you've kept your success from them? I considered the question seriously. At first it was because I wanted to prove myself before facing their judgment. Then when we started gaining recognition, I tried to tell them, but my mother would immediately change the subject or make some comment about real law. Eventually, I just stopped trying. Alyssa took my hand impulsively. Samantha, I can't sit through the rest of this dinner pretending I don't know who you actually are. Would it be okay if I said something? A flutter of panic mixed with a strange sense of relief rose in my chest. What would you say? The truth, she said simply. I'm about to become part of this family, and I can't start that journey with such a fundamental misunderstanding hanging over us. Plus, she added with a slight smile, I've been a fan of your work for years. Professional integrity demands I acknowledge that. For a moment, I imagined it. The looks on my family's faces, my mother's disbelief, the potential for a different kind of relationship moving forward. It was terrifying and tempting in equal measure. Okay, I finally said, surprising myself. But maybe we should go back before they send a search party. As we walked back to the dining room, Alyssa squeezed my arm reassuringly. Just follow my lead. We returned to find dessert being cleared and coffee being served. My absence had apparently gone largely unnoticed, as my mother was in the middle of sharing yet another anecdote about Ryan's surgical residency. There he was, assisting on a procedure most residents wouldn't even be allowed to observe until their third year, she was saying, proudly. Alyssa and I slipped back into our seats. Ryan gave his fiancée a curious look, clearly sensing something had changed, but she just smiled and placed her hand over his on the table. When there was a natural pause in the conversation, Alyssa spoke up. Eleanor, I've been meaning to ask more about Samantha's work. You mentioned she consults for nonprofits. My mother's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, something like that. More coffee. Catherine. She tried to redirect to Alyssa's mother. Actually, Alyssa persisted pleasantly. I'm quite interested, because I work in nonprofit development myself. Boston Children's Alliance. She added for the benefit of the table. How lovely, my mother said dismissively. Volunteer work is so important. Oh, it's not volunteer work, Alyssa corrected her. I'm the Director of Strategic Development. We manage a $30 million annual operating budget and serve thousands of children across Massachusetts. There was a new note of respect in my mother's voice when she responded. That's quite impressive, Alyssa. Your parents must be proud. Thank you. They are, Alyssa agreed, before smoothly continuing. That's actually how I first became familiar with Samantha's work. Her consulting firm has revolutionized how organizations like mine approach sustainable funding and program evaluation. A confused silence fell over the table. My father paused with his coffee cup halfway to his lips, looking between Alyssa and me with furrowed brows. I think there must be some confusion, my mother said with a tight laugh. Samantha does small-scale consulting work, pro bono primarily. Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, Alyssa continued, her tone respectful but firm. Mitchell Consulting Group is one of the most respected firms in our field. Their community impact assessment framework has become the gold standard for nonprofits seeking to demonstrate program effectiveness to major donors and government agencies. All eyes turned to me. I felt a flush creeping up my neck, but forced myself to sit straight and meet their gazes. Is this true, Samantha? My father asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Before I could answer, Alyssa continued. My organization paid a substantial consulting fee to work with Samantha's team last year. The strategies they developed helped us secure a $12 million multi-year grant. There's nothing pro bono about it. My mother's expression had frozen somewhere between disbelief and irritation. Well, I'm sure. It's very nice, she managed. But it's hardly the career she was trained for at Harvard. Interesting. You should mention Harvard, Alyssa replied, pulling out her phone. They featured Samantha in their alumni magazine last fall. I happened to save the article because it was so inspiring. May I? She held up her phone, seeking permission to share. Without waiting for a response, she began reading. Harvard Law graduate Samantha Mitchell has redefined success in the legal consulting space. As founder and CEO of Mitchell Consulting Group, she has built a firm that bridges the gap between legal expertise and social impact. Under her leadership, MCG has helped secure over $500 million in funding for organizations addressing society's most pressing challenges. The article continued, detailing our work with environmental justice initiatives, healthcare access programs, and educational equity projects. As Alyssa read, I watched the expressions around the table transform. Confusion, reassessment, and in some cases, dawning respect. That can't be right, my mother interrupted. Samantha lives in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. If her business were that successful, surely she'd have a more appropriate living situation. I finally found my voice. I choose to live simply, Mom. The majority of our profits are reinvested in the business and our foundation, which provides grants to grassroots organizations that might not qualify for traditional funding. The Mitchell Foundation, Dr. Taylor, suddenly interjected, fully engaged for the first time all evening. Your foundation funded the pilot program for rural telehealth services that we're implementing at Boston Medical Center. Yes, that's one of our initiatives, I confirmed. But why haven't we heard about any of this? Ryan asked, genuinely perplexed. Sam, if you're doing this kind of work, why keep it secret? It wasn't a secret, I said quietly. I tried to talk about it many times, but whenever I brought up my work, the subject was changed or dismissed. That's hardly fair, my mother protested. We always ask about your work at family gatherings. You ask if I'm still doing that non-profit thing, Mom. You've never once asked for details or shown any interest in understanding what I actually do. Well, it's not exactly easy to understand, she countered defensively. All those acronyms and social justice terminology. Samantha won the Kaufman Award last month. Alyssa interjected. It's essentially the non-profit equivalent of the MacArthur Genius Grant. There was a black tie ceremony at the Waldorf. You never mentioned any award, my father said, looking hurt. Would it have mattered? I asked honestly. The last time I tried to share good news about work, Mum said, and I quote, "That's nice, dear. But when are you going to get back to real law?" My mother had the grace to look slightly abashed, though she quickly recovered. Well, how are we supposed to know it was important? You always downplay everything. I stopped sharing because you stopped listening, I replied, surprising myself with my candor. Years of suppressed frustration were finally finding voice. Do you have any idea how painful it is to sit here and be called a failure when I've built something I'm deeply proud of? Something that's actually making a difference in people's lives. We've always supported you, my mother insisted. No, Mom, you've always tolerated me. There's a difference. A heavy silence fell over the table. My brother was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. My father looked stricken. Alyssa's parents were exchanging meaningful glances, clearly reassessing everything they'd heard about me before tonight. Perhaps, Dr. Taylor said, carefully, breaking the tension. We should all take a moment to celebrate both Mitchell siblings. It seems excellence runs in the family, just in different forms. I had no idea, Ryan said, shaking his head. Sam, why didn't you ever tell me? Would it have changed anything? I asked, not unkindly. We all fell into our assigned roles a long time ago. You're the success story. I'm the cautionary tale. It was easier to accept that dynamic than constantly fight against it. I would have been proud to tell people about your work, he said, with quiet sincerity. I am proud. Now that I know, something small and wounded inside me began to heal at those words. Well, my mother said, clearly trying to regain control of the narrative. I suppose we should have paid more attention. Of course we're proud of you too, Samantha. We've always said you're smart. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Eleanor Mitchell, it was practically a full concession. Thank you, I said simply, not wanting to push further and escalate the situation. So the Mitchell name is making waves in both medicine and non-profit leadership, Alyssa's father observed, raising his glass. I'd say that deserves a proper toast, as glasses were raised again, this time in recognition of both Mitchell siblings' accomplishments. I caught Alyssa's eye across the table. She gave me a small conspiratorial smile, and in that moment, I knew I'd found an unexpected ally. As the evening began to wind down, the atmosphere had transformed completely. What had started as yet another exercise in enduring my family's disappointment had somehow shifted into something I'd never experienced before. Genuine interest in my work and accomplishments. So this community impact framework, my father asked, having moved to sit beside me. You developed that yourself? With my team, I nodded. We spent almost a year refining the methodology. The basics premise is that traditional metrics don't capture the full scope of how social programs affect communities. We created a more holistic approach that measures not just direct outcomes, but ripple effects through various systems. That sounds complicated, he admitted. It can be, I smiled, but the results speak for themselves. Organizations using our framework have seen an average increase of 40% in grant funding because they can demonstrate their impact more effectively. Dad looked thoughtful. I always knew you were smart, Sam. But this is beyond smart, it's innovative. I wish I'd understood sooner. You never asked, I said, then immediately regretted the accusatory tone. I mean, I could have tried harder to explain it. No, he said firmly. You're right. We never asked the right questions. We were so fixated on the path we thought you should take that we couldn't see the value in the one you chose. He hesitated before adding, I'm sorry for that. Across the room, Ryan had broken away from a conversation with Alyssa's parents to approach us. Mind if I join? He asked, pulling up a chair. When Dad excused himself to refill his drink, Ryan leaned in. Sam, I feel terrible. All this time, I had no idea what you were actually doing. It's not your fault, I assured him. It kind of is, he countered. I bought into the family narrative without questioning it. I should have asked more questions, shown more interest. He shook his head. Some brother I am. You're not a bad brother, Ryan. Maybe not bad, but definitely oblivious and complicit. He looked genuinely troubled. How many times have I sat there while Mom diminished your work and I just let it happen? I couldn't argue with that. Water under the bridge. No, it's not, he insisted. Things are going to be different going forward, I promise. Before I could respond, my mother appeared, her social smile firmly in place, but strain visible around her eyes. Well, this has been quite the illuminating evening, she said, her voice artificially bright. Samantha, you should have told us about this award. We would have attended the ceremony. It was such a characteristic response, making her absence my responsibility, that I almost laughed. I didn't think you'd be interested, I replied honestly. Of course we'd be. Interested in our daughter receiving an award, she said, sounding wounded. I've always supported your choices. Ryan made a sound that might have been a suppressed snort. Mom, he said with unusual firmness. I think we both know that's not entirely true. You've made it pretty clear over the years that you thought, and Sam was wasting her potential. Our mother looked genuinely startled to hear Ryan challenge her version of reality. I only ever wanted what was best for both of you. What you thought was best, I corrected gently. But we're adults now. We get to decide that for ourselves. She seemed about to argue, but was interrupted by the approach of Alyssa's parents. Eleanor Thomas, Dr. Taylor said warmly. We want to thank you for a lovely evening. And may I say, both your children are quite remarkable. You must be very proud, for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I watched my mother include me in her proud maternal smile, without qualification or hesitation. Yes, she said, we certainly are. As the evening drew to a close, Alyssa found a moment to speak with me privately. I hope I didn't overstep, she said. It just seems so wrong that your family didn't know. You didn't overstep, I assured her. Actually, I think you might have done me a huge favor, though I'm still processing exactly what happened tonight. Well, for what it's worth, I'm really looking forward to having you as a sister-in-law, she said, and not just because of your professional reputation, though I admit that's a pretty exciting bonus. I'm looking forward to it too, I replied, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Though I should warn you, my mother will probably try to recruit you as an ally in her ongoing campaign to improve me. Alyssa laughed. I think I can handle Eleanor Mitchell. And besides, she added with a conspiratorial smile, I'm pretty good at advocating for causes I believe in. It's literally my job. As I gathered my things to leave, Ryan caught me by the door. Sam, I was thinking, maybe we could get lunch next week. I'd really like to hear more about your work. For real this time. The simple sincerity in his voice made my throat tighten unexpectedly. I'd like that. And maybe, he added hesitantly, you could help with some of the wedding planning. Alyssa would love your input. Are you sure Mom would be okay with that? I asked skeptically. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. Mom doesn't get to dictate everything anymore. This is our wedding, and we want you involved. If that's a problem for her, she'll have to adjust. It was such an un-Ryan-like statement, at least the Ryan I thought I knew, that I couldn't help but smile. In that case, I'd be happy to help. As I headed home that night, replaying the evening's fine, unexpected turns, I realized something had profoundly shifted. For years, I'd been living two separate lives. My real one, full of meaningful work and real impact. And the faded version I kept for family dinners just to avoid conflict. But now, for the first time, I could see the possibility of merging them. Not seamlessly, of course, but maybe with enough effort and grace, something genuine could emerge. My phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. Forgot to say, let's talk about including your foundation in the wedding. Instead of favors, maybe a guest name donation. Call tomorrow. I smiled. I wasn't just gaining a sister-in-law. I was gaining an ally. In the months after that life-altering dinner, something shifted. My family dynamic, once rigid, began to thaw. My career revelation didn't erase years of tension overnight, but it opened doors that had long been locked. Alyssa didn't just become a sister-in-law. She became a friend. Our shared passion for social equity gave us solid common ground. We met often, sometimes for wedding details, mostly to swap ideas. Her perspective on engagement helped shape one of my foundation's largest initiatives, and I linked her team with new donors they'd never reached before. You know, she told me one afternoon over coffee, Ryan brags about you now. To everyone, his brilliant big sister, the non-profit genius. Ryan's change hit hardest. In a good way, that lunch we planned, it became a 3-hour heart-to-heart. He asked smart questions. He even opened up about his frustrations with medicine's lack of focus on underserved communities. I always thought you left law because it got too hard, he confessed. Never thought maybe. You left because you had stronger values then. I did. Not stronger. I told him gently. Just different. He nodded. Maybe, but it's made me rethink everything. Did I really want this career? Or did I just chase what was expected? I tensed. Are you having second thoughts about surgery? No, he assured me. But I am rethinking my specialty. Everyone pushed me toward cardiothoracic, status, money, reputation. But lately, I can't stop thinking about pediatrics, reconstruction. The need is huge, and kids with no access to that kind of care. That's where I want to help. It was just a change in specialty, but it symbolized so much. Ryan finally stepping outside of Mom's mold, making decisions based on his principles. My dad changed too. He started sending me articles about nonprofits, often with awkward messages like, "This reminded me of what you do." Very impressive. His way of saying, "I see you, Mom." Still, Mom. Her transformation came in small, often amusing doses. "This is Samantha," she'd tell her friends now. "My daughter, the CEO. She just won a big award." Did she truly understand my work? Not really, but she knew others respected it. And in Eleanor Mitchell's world, that counted for a lot. When Alyssa asked me to be a bridesmaid, I hesitated. Would I be able to handle that level of family exposure again? But Ryan added, "Sam, it means a lot to both of us. You're not just my sister. You're someone we respect and want beside us." How could I say no? Wedding planning came with friction, especially with Mom's iron grip on every detail. But Ryan surprised me. When she dismissed one of my suggestions during a rehearsal dinner chat, he cut her off. "Mom, Sam's ideas are valid. If you can't support that, maybe this isn't the right time to keep planning." Her stunned face was priceless. The golden child setting boundaries worked far better than years of my failed attempts. The wedding, beautiful, elegant and tasteful, sure, but infused with their shared values. Instead of favors, they donated to pediatric mental health with table cards, explaining how guests help transform lives. At the reception, while fixing my bridesmaid dress, a shockingly flattering shade of blue, a tall man with kind eyes approached. "You must be Samantha," he said warmly. "I'm Marcus, Alyssa's cousin from Chicago." "Nice to meet you," I said, noticing his gentle smile. "Alyssa talks about you all the time," he added. "I work in community development, and I've actually used your impact framework. It completely changed how we evaluate neighborhood projects." We ended up deep in conversation about urban design, inclusion, and equitable strategy. It was the most stimulating exchange I'd had in months. When he asked for my number to continue the chat, I said yes, feeling a bit like a giddy teen. 6 months later, Marcus and I were dating. Long distance, yes, but consistent. He understood my world in a way most men never had. His dedication to community change aligned with everything I valued. At Ryan and Alyssa's first dinner party as newlyweds, Mom stunned me again. "Samantha's expanding to Chicago," she said proudly. "Though I suspect it's as much about that young man as business." She winked at Marcus, who gave my hand a little squeeze. "Actually, Mom," I corrected her gently, "we've had plans to expand for a year. Marcus is a lovely bonus, not the reason." To my shock, she laughed. "Always the professional. Well, whatever the reason, we're proud of you. We're proud of you." No caveats, no comparisons. Words I'd waited decades to hear. Later that night, walking home, Marcus asked me, "Does it bother you? Your mom still doesn't totally understand what you do." I thought for a moment. It used to hurt, I admitted. But now, I've realized something. Her approval isn't the goal. The impact, the work itself, is what matters. I'd spent so long trying to fit someone else's mold of success. But once I embraced my own definition, everything changed. "What is your definition?" Marcus asked. "Making something meaningful, helping real people, building relationships built on respect, and being able to look in the mirror, knowing I made the right call, even when it was hard." The road from that humiliating dinner to this life hadn't been straight or simple. There were setbacks, moments when the old pain crept back, moments I questioned if I'd made the right choice, but those doubts no longer had power over me. The biggest lesson, living authentically, true to your purpose, even when misunderstood, isn't just healing, it's the bridge to real connection. When I stopped hiding and finally let my family see who I truly was, I gave them the chance to love the real me. And some of them did. Being underestimated turned out to be the gift I never asked for. It built my resilience, gave me my compass, and let me define success on my terms. And when the recognition came, it was on a foundation I built entirely for myself. If you're watching and feel unseen or dismissed by the people who should believe in you, remember this: their inability to see your worth isn't a reflection of your value. Sometimes, the people closest to us are also the ones most clouded by their own expectations. Have you ever experienced that moment when someone finally saw you clearly? Or walked a path your family didn't understand, only to succeed on your own terms? Tell me in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe so others can find it too. Remember, the greatest success isn't approval. It's becoming the person you were always meant to be. Thank you for being here. And whatever your journey looks like, own it.